Am I the a-hole for making all the women in my family leave after they all showed up to my wedding wearing white? I, male 33, have a large family. Mostly aunts and female cousins aside from mom, stepmom, stepsister, and grandmother. I don't know how to say this, but all those women I mentioned above are into teasing and joking. They've formed a unit, which I admit is kind of toxic, and they tease and roast every new woman that enters the family by marriage by setting up tests to see if they deserve to be part of the family, or roast their looks and styles to the point of breaking confidence and self-esteem down. Then after a few months of teasing, they'd announce that they've finally welcomed them into the family. The newest member would join in on the teasing too, which is crazy as my dad says. When I first introduced my then girlfriend, now wife, I made it clear that I didn't want any of the women in the unit to come at her or harass her, not even a single word. They went behind my back and roasted her looks and job, and I discovered they've been doing it on Facebook. I had them apologize one by one after they gave the "we're just testing the water to see if she's capable to be part of the family" excuse. They didn't want to apologize, but once I said I wouldn't invite any of the units unless they apologize, including my mom, everyone immediately apologized and brought gifts for my wife. First of them was my stepmom and my sister-in-law. My wedding was 2 weeks ago. There was talk about the women in the family wanting to pull a prank on my wife by wearing white, and called it the ultimate test to see how my wife react. My brother warned me, so I announced that if any one of them showed up in white, I would have them kicked out, including mom. They said this wasn't true, and that they'd never do such a thing. But then they showed up to my wedding one by one, wearing white dresses, and each and every one of them was told to leave after they tried giving excuses, by either making scenes or getting the men involved. The senior women of the unit who are mom and aunts also showed up in white, but refused to leave. I threatened to take harsher action, and mom was pissed, telling me to step aside, but I didn't let her in. I had her leave while the men of the family were watching stunned. Dad was on my side and supported me a lot. I felt absolutely awful because my wedding was being interrupted by them making scenes. My wife was hurt beyond measure, but the women in the family were pissed. My cousin blasted me in social media later, saying I excluded all the women from the wedding because my wife was so insecure that she couldn't handle another woman's presence at her wedding. I had an argument with them, and mom berated me saying it was supposed to be a prank, but I said they were taking it too far. Mom said it took it too far by kicking them out, because they were trying to get a reaction from my wife to see if she was one of those BrideZillas, and were going to change soon as the prank was over. But I ruined my own entire wedding by reacting so aggressively. I stopped talking after she said I had to bring my wife and apologize. I haven't seen a lot of them in 2 weeks, and they've excluded me from everything. Was I the a-hole for how I handled this? Edit. I just want to explain that A, this has been happening for years. The men in the family are split on this behavior. Some of them encourage it, like my uncle and my cousin's husbands. One is now an ex. And some are against it, like me and my dad and brother. B, the women claim that there's nothing hurtful in what they do, because they claim they're just looking out for us men, and that their goal ultimately is to make sure the women who enter the family are decent. C, my dad always ends up arguing with my mom and grandmother, since they're the ones who started this whole thing with their behavior and attitude towards other women. D, and I'm not sure if I should mention this, but my male cousin, who's a middle schooler, said he'd make sure to leave the country before even meeting any woman because of this, and it made me chuckle. Also, the dresses they showed up in were simple white dresses. Nothing over the top, but still were white dresses. I realized they went ahead with their plans, even after I stated what I'd do in that case. Now for the top comments. Not today, home. Your family's toxic, and I'm so sad for your wife that they would do that, but also so happy for her that she has a husband who will support her and have her back. I'm sorry your family tried to hijack your wedding for a power play, but you did the right thing, and your marriage will be stronger because of it. Can you imagine how the wife's family thought about all of this? If I were the mother of Opie's wife, I would be really worried about my daughter being around those women. Good on Opie for breaking the cycle. Not today, home. This level of hazing has crossed the line to emotional mistreatment and blackmail, and that is probably understating it. It's very good you stood up for your spouse. You handled it well, but emotional blackmailers use family to pressure the victims into compliance with the mistreatment. Most often, when standing up to familial emotional blackmailers, it ends with forced no contact for non-compliance. No contact is healthier, but it can be hard to be shunned from the family. This is hazing. That's the only word for it. It's repugnant behavior. The women in your family haze new members of their sorority. It is incredibly harmful. No. First cardinal rule, don't wear white to a wedding unless you're the bride. If you do, you're the a-hole. I'm sure they're well aware of this rule. That's why they did what they did. They knew how much that would make my wife feel hurt. To me, that's the point you and her have to stick to going forward. So many sweet daughter-in-laws try to make amends by focusing on, "You hurt me, please stop." But the women in your family know they hurt people with us. And that is the very reason they do it. They intentionally hurt people and only stop once that hurt person joins in on picking on the next one. So I think you and your wife should consider just not giving these women more opportunities to hurt people you love. You should probably think about going low or no contact. People who intentionally hurt their own son on his wedding day like this don't really deserve to be part of your new beautiful life. I'd be worried about how they'll treat your wife as the marriage progresses, especially if you decide to have children. Next story is titled, "Am I the a-hole for what I said when my husband told his family basically I handled everything in the house?" So me, female 26, and my husband, male 29, recently got married. We both contribute to household chores, but me more than him even after we made separate schedule and split chores equally. He'd ask me for favors like fix the kitchen faucet for him, deal with the bugs in the backyard, etc., which are originally his chores. But because he said he had to finish work or complain from being tired, then I'd handle them happily and without hesitation. We were visiting his parents for the first time since we got married. My mother-in-law and I were talking about home duties and whatnot. Then my father-in-law asked my husband how marriage life was treating him, and my husband sighed and said, "Oh man." Then started talking about how exhausted he was from handling almost all responsibilities and taking on so many chores this past week. From fixing the kitchen faucet, dealing with the bugs in the backyard, taking our dogs to the vet, cleaning the entire basement, which are all things I did for him. But clearly he was trying to take credit. It kept on about how he does most chores around the house and working as well, so he had no me time. He said, basically, I handle everything in the house, while smug smiling. I was taken aback completely. I said, hold on, because literally all the stuff he mentioned was done by me. His parents were like, huh? He kept staring at me confused, as I explained in details how I handled each and every one of those chores, which should have originally had been done by him, but he kept making excuses to get out of it. I even shared pictures I took that I posted on Facebook, especially the basement like before/after pictures. Then I told him no more favors from now on if this is how he's gonna play. Silence followed, and the entire family side-eyed my husband as he kept looking away. I didn't say anything till we got home. And that is where he pointed out how I was wrong for how I responded, and should have just either agreed or said nothing at all, but apparently made him feel incompetent in front of his family. We argued, and he apologized for saying what he said, and asked me to apologize so we could move past this. But I refused, and said I was being treated in an unfair manner since I worked hard to do him those favors. Not today, home. He made you look lazy in front of your in-laws. And not only did he lie about taking the brunt of household responsibilities, but he specifically brought up chores that you both know you did. That's not okay. It is purposefully putting you down in front of others. Not a great start to a marriage. This. Not only did he expect you to go along with the lie, he also expects you to apologize for it. Apologize for what exactly? Him playing stupid games? I don't think so. This would be my hill to die on. He put you down to his family to make you look bad because he couldn't come out and be honest. His lies had consequences. One of them having to be his apology for causing an issue, not yours. Your husband is an a-hole. He deserves to feel incompetent because he chose to be that way. You didn't put a gun to his head and tell him to lie. Why should you clean up his mess and apologize? Hell no, OP. Be honest about what though? This is just such a weird thing to lie about that I have to wonder his motivation. Why on earth wouldn't he have just said, actually, we've just kind of been settling in? Or even, meh, I wasn't feeling great this week, so the wife picked up the slack this week. This is his family. They know his character pretty well. I think most adults are past trying to impress mommy and daddy. He literally just went out of his way, for no reason, to make his wife look bad. Not today, home. If he doesn't want to feel incompetent, then he should be incompetent. I never understand people would do this. Like he knows he does nothing. He knows Opie knows he does nothing. But then he tells bold-faced lies and gets hurt when the truth comes out. Like, if you know the truth is going to make you seem a certain way, then why don't you just shut your mouth? Or put in the work you want credit for? He could have even said, "It's hard, but Opie has been great," if he wants to play like he contributes. But he chose to lie unprovoked, and is now trying to guilt her into an apology. Just yikes. The only person who made him look bad is himself by lying. Good for you for calling him out and sticking to it. Next story. Am I the a-hole for going to stay with my in-laws after my husband told me I shouldn't be here when I tried to surprise him and getting him in trouble with his family? So, my husband travels a lot for business, so we don't get to see each other as often as I would like, unless I go with him, which isn't always possible. I found out he was going to be in the country his parents live in, and I thought it would be a nice idea to fly there too, so I could surprise him and see my in-laws as well, since I haven't seen my husband since August and my in-laws since 2019. Well, it didn't go down as I had planned. The first thing my husband said when he saw me was, "You shouldn't be here." And when I asked him what he meant by that, all he said was he had a meeting that he was getting late for, and left. Honestly, his whole reaction really hurt, since I thought he would be happy to see me, since we haven't seen each other in so long. I ended up going to see my in-laws since my sister-in-law was also visiting her parents, and she kept telling me to come over. When I got there, they were much happier to see me, but noticed I was upset about something. They kept asking me, and I told them about how my husband had reacted. My mother-in-law basically told me I would be staying with them for the duration of my visit, since he couldn't appreciate me coming all this way to see him. My father-in-law sent me a message telling him to come to their house for dinner since I was here, and when he got here, they basically told him off for how he reacted. Once dinner was over, my husband wanted me to come home with him so we could talk about what happened. But my in-laws kept insisting I stay with them instead, and I ended up choosing to stay with them instead of going with him. My husband comes over every single night for dinner and is very obviously angry at me still. We did talk about it through text the day it happened, and my husband was mad that I chose to stay, and that I ran a tattle to his family. Am I the a-hole? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. His reaction is concerning and leaves me wondering if he's got a second family, a second wife, or a mistress. And I also wonder if his family is aware. Yep, first thought. "You shouldn't be here" is a very weird way to react, even if he is busy or stressed. Yes, I'm away from home for college and don't get to see my family. College is hard and I feel stressed all the time. When my parents and brother visit though, it's like the stress disappears, even if it's just for a minute or two, and then the feeling's right back. I would imagine seeing my significant other would elicit an even greater response of joy. I've been at a new job for about a month that requires 50% travel. I was away last week, home this week, and I'm leaving Monday for another week. If my partner showed up at my hotel or office to surprise me partway through the week, I would be overjoyed. Just to show up for the other side of this, I would not be overjoyed at a surprise like this. So I think it's a little unfair for the sub to immediately pile onto this guy, for not being stoked about a pretty huge change of plans he has to navigate around now. If Opie had given him some space to get over the initial disgruntlement and heard his side of it rather than bring the in-laws into it, letting them tear into him without hearing his side, and then choosing to stay with them without even hearing his side, there's a decent possibility Opie wouldn't even be here posting this. If I were on a business trip and I already had a general sense of how everything was going to go, and I was on my way out the door, and then my significant other showed up out of the blue without me being able to get her settled in or have time to process what was going on, I'd have to be rattled right before a meeting that I was already running late for. My initial response would be less than warm, let's just say. It would be more along the lines of, "What are you doing here?" Meaning, "I can't pay attention to you right now, and we're not going to have a quality interaction, but now I'm rattled and have to recalibrate," which I can do, but it's going to have to happen after the meeting. And I really wish you hadn't put me in the spot, which could have been easily avoided with a text message that I would have really appreciated. But that's me. I don't think it's fair for Opie to show up out of nowhere, and then be upset that her husband didn't give her the welcome she wanted right before a business meeting. Just because she might have liked such a surprise, doesn't mean everyone is into that. I feel like people who like surprises and change gears easily don't understand people who don't, and then get their feelings hurt like this. Last story. Am I the a-hole for abruptly leaving my boyfriend at his family at dinner after they refused to respect my allergies? I, 19 female, recently got the chance to safely see my boyfriend, 20 male, family for dinner. I work as a paramedic and would reject going to any plans my boyfriend had with me wanting to go see his family due to COVID. I recently got the chance to have a 2-week vacation. I decided to accept my boyfriend's offer to see his family. I asked my boyfriend what would be served. and just checking in to see if what they would make won't have seafood/shellfish, since I'm allergic to them. The day comes and I had a good time with them, up until the time for us to eat. I noticed that the food they had mostly had either seafood in it or was entirely seafood. I asked if they had anything else, but my boyfriend insisted I should just eat a little to not be disrespectful. I stood my ground and informed him and his family that I'm severely allergic to seafood. And after they insisted that they won't serve me or make anything that doesn't have seafood, I thanked them and left. Today, I got angry text messages from my boyfriend, upset that I disrespected him and his family, and wanted me to apologize to them. But I'm not going to. Am I the a-hole? This is a tough one. Should you protect yourself from a severe allergy attack, or should you protect your boyfriend's family's feelings? Not today, Hollow B. And drop the boyfriend. He's got a medical condition where his head is stuck real deep somewhere. It blows my mind how many of these types of posts I read where an in-law family expects a daughter-in-law or sister-in-law to eat what they're allergic to. It's like, so you would rather they die? Okay then. What is disrespectful is telling someone to endanger themselves to cater to people and willing to be reasonable people. Your boyfriend is actively trying to hurt you. And his family. There is literally no reason that every dish had up have seafood in it. These people were trying to prove Opie was lying about her allergies. If she had eaten it, then she would have been blamed because she had an attack. This boyfriend is bad news, and I would dump him.
Am I the a-hole for refusing to sign my parents' house, which is under my name, over to my wife if I die? So here is the backstory. In 2008, my parents lost most of their money, and it got to the point they were no longer able to afford their house. My dad is quite a bit older than my mom, and his biggest worry is that he is not able to leave her enough to live and pay for a home or rent without having to financially rely on me and my sister. So this is the plan we came up with. We found a house with a large lot that we bought under my name. My parents put down a significant amount of their savings for the down payment for the property and to build a detached accessory dwelling unit for them to live in. I lived in the main house for a while and my parents in the ADU. The agreement was once I moved out, we would rent out the main house. I would be responsible for the main house, maintenance, repairs, etc., and my parents are responsible for the ADU. We would split any property taxes not covered by the rental of the other property. I live in a very expensive area, so my parents will have a place to live for the rest of their lives with no stress about becoming homeless. And I end up with a great investment property that I already have quite a bit of equity in. I have the house in a trust. In the event of my untimely death, the ownership of the house will transfer to my parents, and then transfer to my partner or offsprings once they pass away. My wife wants me to change the trust to have the deed of the property go to her instead of my parents. She says she, of course, will let them live there, but wants control of the property if I die. I feel really uncomfortable signing over the house my parents paid for to her, even though it's in my name and I'm spending some money on property taxes and maintenance. I consider it their house since they have paid for everything. Part of the reason I feel uncomfortable is because when we were updating our life insurance policies once we got married, she made sure I removed my parents as beneficiaries and added her on as 100% beneficiary, but then refused to add me as a beneficiary to her policy and had 100% going to her sister. Am I the a-hole for refusing to sign the house over to her? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. You married her, so it sounded pretty reasonable, until she made her sister the beneficiary and you just stayed married to her. Like, what is even going on here? What kind of marriage is this? She has some really amazing qualities, which is obviously why I married her, but she is a very strong, stubborn person, and I am extremely passive to a fault, so I feel like she's just walking all over me. Why are you still married to her? She is using you. I bet if you were to unfortunately pass away, she will boot your parents out of their home. Unfortunately, this all came up after we found out she was pregnant. Part of the reason I feel uncomfortable is because when we were updating our life insurance policies once we got married, she made sure I removed my parents as beneficiaries and added her on as 100% beneficiary, but then refused to add me as a beneficiary to her policy and had 100% going to her sister. Yeah, that's some red flags right there. Like, that's a big one right there. She's covered if you die, but you aren't if she dies. Not the a-hole, and I'd consider counseling at a minimum. I am going to counseling myself, but have not been able to convince her to go with me. I think she likes what you can provide for her more than she likes you. You should lock down all of your assets and change your insurance policy to your parents and/or sister. She won't even go to counseling with you to help the issues. I don't think she has your best interest or your family's in mind. Sounds like a black widow digger if such a thing exists. Sorry, honey, the house is in a trust. I won't change it. And change the subject. If she brings it up again, rinse and repeat. Not the a-hole. This trust was pre-marriage, so she gets squat. If you change it now, the argument could be made that it was made during marriage. Don't. I've used the argument a lot that I had this agreement before we met, but her response is, I made the agreement when I was single. Now that I have a family, the agreement needs to change. But she won't change her life insurance? Next story. Am I the a-hole for calling off my wedding after finding out my fiancé never had the money he promised to contribute? I, 33 female, have been with my partner, 32 male, for 5 years. He proposed in March 2024, and we agreed to get married in December 2025. He promised to cover 70% of the wedding costs and said he'd transfer money to my account whenever I paid for something. I ended up handling all the planning and bookings. By April this year, I had already paid around 500,000 local currency. But when I checked, he hadn't sent me a single cent. I kept reminding him, and he always said, "Yes, baby," after work. I work in an accounting firm with over 40 clients, so I'm insanely busy and didn't have time to double-check every day. But I trusted him. When we finally sat down to talk about it, I found out he didn't actually have the money. He planned to ask his parents or use future income, meaning he had been lying about having savings. All this time, he bragged about being financially stable and successful. He's a lawyer, but apparently it was all talk. I understand that people can go through tough financial times, but lying about it and letting me carry all the burden, that felt like a betrayal. I decided to call off the wedding and the relationship. Now he's throwing the wedding expenses in my face, even though I did all the work. My parents think I should go through with it since the engagement has already been announced to family. Am I the a-hole for calling it off? I feel heartbroken, used, and honestly, fooled. And seriously, if you can't afford to get married, why propose in the first place? You didn't call off a wedding, you canceled a subscription to nonsense. Good for you. Thanks, that honestly made me laugh. I needed to hear that. Calling off the wedding was a sensible and self-respecting decision. You deserve a partner who is honest and reliable, especially when it comes to finances. Not the a-hole, but to be clear, this is about the lying and betrayal, not necessarily about the money. Yeah, it's the dishonesty that broke me, not just the lack of money. If he had been upfront, things might have been different. Thank God you found this out before you got married. As they say, money problems don't start with money. What if this had been your mortgage payment or school fees? Those aren't optional expenses, and there can be huge repercussions for non-payment. I say good on you for holding your boundary. Also, don't fall for the sunk cost fallacy. Yes, you announced it to family, but if they love you, they'll support you. Better to be a little embarrassed now than waste more time and have to pay for a divorce attorney and separate assets later. Because you already announced it is among the worst reasons to go through with a marriage. I'd rather save my future than to save face, Limao. You don't commit to someone because of what your parents, relatives, or friends expect. You commit because you trust the person, and he broke that trust. For real, if trust is broken before the marriage, what more after? Not worth the risk. And to be honest, it's really non-negotiable for me. Next story. Am I the a-hole for refusing to let my dad's future stepdaughter stay with me for a week when my dad and his fiancée go on their honeymoon? My dad's engaged to a woman named Clara, and Clara has a 13-year-old daughter, Elizabeth. I don't live with my dad and Clara. I, 21 male, rent a place with my girlfriend, 21 female. We have a spare bedroom and we've had family members stay with us before. Because of this, and because Elizabeth doesn't have a dad or extended family in her life, and because nobody in our family will take Elizabeth for the week, my dad is pressuring me to let her stay with us for the week. Elizabeth's a brat and a spoiled one too. She thinks she's entitled to do what she wants, when she wants. My grandparents babysat her several times before they said no more. The last straw was her taking $20 from my grandparents' room to buy herself snacks, and she left the house and went to the store without asking. She'd snooped in other rooms of the house before. She broke stuff in their house before, like a vase, a picture frame, and the handle of one of the kitchen cabinets. She's cursed at different members of my family, flipped them the bird, yelled at younger kids in the family, and has stolen food from their plates too. Specifically, the younger members of the family. We've had our encounters too. When I visited Dad and she tried to take my phone after I said no and was willing to fight me for it. Or when she got into my face because I didn't bring my PS5 over to Dad's house. I avoid going to Dad's house because I don't want to deal with Elizabeth. My dad knows about all of this. He's choosing to sign up to be Elizabeth's stepdad, but he's saying that I should sign up to be her brother and help her, and I told him, no freaking way. We fought about it because he sees me allowing her to stay as showing good faith in the new family, and he told me Elizabeth will be around for the rest of my life, so I should try to get along. He told me she needs to go somewhere, and she's not going on honeymoon with him and Clara. I told him to pay someone to watch her, because whoever gets stuck with her deserves it. He told me she's not that bad, and it's only a week, and it's not like I can't have people over. My dad's not backing down, but neither am I. He's getting more angry about it, and maybe worried that he'll need to spend the money on finding someone to stay with her. He told me this isn't how family treats each other, and all kinds of crap. And look, I know Elizabeth's only 13. I know teens are moody. I know she's probably got her own trauma and stuff. So I'm coming here to ask if I'm the a-hole for refusing to let her stay for the week my dad's on his honeymoon. Because my dad sure thinks so, and I know Clara does too. She thinks we're all a-holes for not giving her daughter more of a chance. Now for the top comments. First off, even if Elizabeth would be an angel, your dad's planning would be weird. You hardly know the girl. You're a young man, sharing a place with your girlfriend. That's just weird. I'm talking as a father of 2 grown-up daughters. If I had a new girlfriend or a fiancé, I would never ever expect my grown-up daughters to babysit new partner's teenage kid. The thought would have never crossed my mind. Given Elizabeth's rap sheet, your father pressuring you is beyond weird. It's downright evil. The whole "this isn't how family treats each other" spiel is just emotional blackmail and should be treated as such. By the way, tell your father emotional blackmail isn't how family treats each other. Please don't give in. Thank you. I'm prepared to stand strong on this and hold on to my no. My dad doesn't like it, and I know he's stressing, but he needs to figure out an alternative solution. And what happens, OP, when the brat doesn't get her own way and out of spite accuses you of inappropriate touching or worse? If you are to concede, you must never be alone with her and must have hidden audio or video cameras for your protection. I'd actually be more afraid of her assaulting me, and in my attempt to stop her, I'd be accused. I think that's more her style because she can be very aggressive. Last story. Am I the a-hole for telling others about the family therapist firing my dad and his wife? My mom died when I, 16, was 11. My dad remarried last year. I didn't like it and I acted up. I still don't like it, full disclosure. But I was a terror and made life harder for them. I felt like Dad betrayed me and my mom by marrying again, and so fast too. But my biggest thing was they expected her to slot right in, like she was suddenly my parent too, and someone who got to make decisions for me. It was things like giving me new chores, telling me how to dress and what I should eat, where I should and shouldn't go, trying to make me explain my homework to her and expecting to let her review it. Stuff like that I hated, and I would get so mad that I'd scream at her, and at Dad when he backed her up. So I'd sneak out. I was rude to them. I wouldn't listen to her and other stuff like that. My dad tried talking to me, but he talked to me before he met her too. He made promises about how it would be just us until I was ready to move out. He promised me he needed a lot of time before he could think about dating again because he loved my mom so much. Then he's already dating someone and they're getting married, and I was still 15 and couldn't just leave. And not only that, but he was acting like she was now my parent too. I felt like that wasn't fair. He'll date and keep her from moving in, but they had clearly talked about how she'd be a parent once she moved in because they were on the same page with that stuff. When things were getting so bad that Dad was worried I'd run away, and I considered it, and I stayed out all night sometimes. He told us we needed family therapy. Strike one in family therapy was my dad and his wife refused the therapist's suggestion of each of us getting solo sessions too. They just wanted the group sessions. Strike two was the way they would talk over me when I was asked what I would be okay with or would like to see. The therapist said if me, the teen, could listen, then so could they. Strike three was Dad arguing back against the therapist and his wife calling her useless. Dad said she was not giving good advice and that he didn't need to consult me on who could and couldn't come into our home or help him parent me. He said he didn't care if he had sounded like an ass to me, but he had decided his wife was deserving of equal respect and authority. Strike four, which was the final strike, was they refused to compromise. I already had. I stopped being so disrespectful and getting into so much trouble. I did ignore my dad's wife a lot because I couldn't handle talking to her with how she talked to me. But I wouldn't go anywhere without asking or stay out all night, and I didn't call her and I stopped calling her names. But they refused to discuss her not being my parent. The therapist even told me if she got them to agree, it would be reevaluated and discussed more over time. That she might end up with some parental-like authority eventually. But they said she was staying my parent, and they weren't willing to discuss it. They told the therapist she was meant to make me get on board with that. So the therapist told them they were wasting her time, and she wouldn't see us all anymore. She did say she'd continued to see me since I worked with her, but my dad said no way, and so none of us are going back. They're angry that she fired them. I found it hilarious. I told my friends, I told different family members, I told the neighbor who Dad would tell all our crap to before. And my dad hates it. He told me I'm trying to humiliate them, and it's personal business, not public. I told him if he could tell people our business, then so could I. He told me I was enjoying it too much. Then we got into another fight. But hey, I just went into my room instead of sneaking out. Dad and his wife are blaming me because Dad's side of the family are giving them crap for getting fired from therapy. Am I the a-hole? It takes a lot for a therapist to break up with a patient. They must have been really, really bad and challenging to work with. See if your school counselor can help you find someone else just for yourself. You are a few years away from adulthood. You need the tools to deal with the present and to plan for your future. They wouldn't do any of the work. They wanted me to be the only one changing things. Sounds like your dad is willing to throw away a future with you for this woman. I'd tell that's exactly what he's doing. And when I turned 18, I'd be gone from his life and let him end up sad, miserable, and alone. OP's dad married a woman who sounds controlling. You can't come into a teenager's life and think you're going to have control and authority over them just like that. Heck, even a biological parent who has been absent and suddenly appears in their teenage years couldn't do that. Teenagers are almost adults. Authority to them comes with years of respect and familiarity. Dad is stupid. He is going to lose his daughter over this woman's control fetish. Tell her to have her own damn kids if she wants to boss someone around so badly. When OP moves out, that bossy energy will need a new target, and Dad will be the only one around. Let's see how he likes being told what to do. Not the a-hole. It is a funny story to tell everyone. They were fired because the therapist didn't do what they wanted her to do. They were fired because the therapist agreed with OP and not them.